Depending on the quality of the lens that you're using, as well as the focal length, you might see some distortion in your images. Typically, lens distortion is much more noticeable with the wider angle lenses, and it gets worse with the less expensive lenses. Let's go ahead and take a look at this image by using Command R on the Mac or Control R in order to open it into Camera Raw. We can see that it almost looks like the boards on the house are bent. It's like they're bowing out. In order to have Camera Raw fix this automatically, we need to scoot over to the lens correction panel. You can see that I have my grid on, but we can toggle that off if we don't want to see it. I tend to like it on though while I'm correcting distortions. Over in the profile area, we can enable a lens profile correction. And what this does is it tells Camera Raw to go out and look for a profile in order to remove the distortions caused by the lens for this specific make and model. And of course, it knows that information because that information is being saved as part of the EXIF information in the file. So this is nothing that you have to do. Camera Raw is going to automatically select the correct profile for you. And you can see by toggling this off and on that it's trying to remove the distortion in the lens. Now, this is very different from a perspective correction, which we'll talk about in a later video. This is only removing the distortion that's caused by the lens. You can also use the correction amount sliders if you want to manually go in and change the amount of distortion that's being corrected. So you can see here, as I move it to the left, we're getting the kind of barrel look to the image. As I move it to the right, we've got more of a pincushion move. So again, we can come in here and we can manually override the profile if we want to. The same goes with the vignetting. If I move the vignetting over to the left, it's going to darken down the vignette. If I move it over to the right, it's going to amplify the correction. So if I double click and set this at 100%, that's correcting 100% of the vignetting that's caused by the lens, and it's doing that via the profile. So anything that you change here is going to amplify what the profile does. So I'll double click on the distortion slider and set that back as well, because I think the profile is actually doing a very good job of removing any of the lens distortion. It just so happens that this house is also a little bit crooked, so the rotation is off a bit. Of course, I can fix that over here in the manual panel by just using the rotation slider to just straighten that slightly. Returning back to the profile tab here, I just want to point out that if you're using maybe a point and shoot camera, or if you're using your camera phone and you come in here to the profile area, Camera Raw might not be able to find a profile for that make and model camera, or certainly not that make and model phone, in which case it would come up with no results here, in which case it wouldn't be able to make the automatic correction. If that's the case, and I'll just emulate that by unchecking the enable profile correction, you can always scoot over to the manual area and you can use the distortion slider here in order to make a correction. You can also scroll down and use the lens vignetting slider here to correct any lens vignetting manually that was created by the lens. What I would suggest is that you do remove any lens vignetting at this point in time. If you want to add a creative lens vignette to your image later, you can always do that using the effects panel. But if you go in and you crop your image, you might crop the image off center a bit, in which case the vignetting that's caused by the lens is not going to look right. It's going to look off balance. And in fact, if you add a creative post-crop vignette, you would be amplifying the vignette maybe in one area and not another. All right, let's go ahead and reset this transformation and reset this lens vignetting, because I can simply go over to the profile panel and enable the lens profile correction for this image, and it would go ahead and fix that. Now let's turn off the grid for a moment and then use the P key to preview the before and after, before and after. As you get more advanced, you can actually make your own profiles for your specific lens and camera combination using the free Adobe Lens Profile Creator found on the Labs site, which is labs.adobe.com. And if you're feeling adventurous, you can use the Adobe Lens Profile Downloader if you wanted to look for custom profiles or maybe share those that you've created. Because there are a lot of people in the community that are using odd combinations of cameras and lenses, and they've created their own lens profiles, and they're sharing them on that site. But again, that's as you're getting more and more advanced. For now, using the profiles for the more common lens and camera combinations is an excellent and easy option for removing lens distortion.